Previously on the Jay and Dan podcast.
Dan, how is Cuba? You're joining us from Havana? Are you at Fidel's compound?
Mm-hmm. You hear a you run for your life because they spray the chemical into the woods and it goes into the hotel. Mm-hmm. The Swingers Tim Hortons. Don't go to that one. Double Beat's a whole different thing in that one.
So does the drive-thru, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Angry sex.
Mm-hmm.
On right in studio, O'Toole in Cuba. This is the makings of something weird.
We gotta come up with a title of it, eh, Ken?
It's just one big bucket of...
You're listening to the Jay and Dan podcast, brought to you by Mark's Never Iron Perfectly Pressed Shirts.
Dance.
Can't believe how much Jerry D and I sounded alike on the phone.
A lot of people commented on that. Jerry D was our guest on last week's podcast. Hey, it's the Jay and Dan podcast, episode number 5, brought to you by Mark's Perfectly Pressed Shirts, or as Dan likes to call it, Mark's Real Clothing.
I also call it the Perfectly Pressed podcast.
Hey, you were in Cuba last week. Now you're back. Tell us overall your impressions of the trip, and would you go back again, Dan?
I could write the Cuba tourism slogan.
Let's hear it.
Great beaches, short flight, crap food. There you go. But everyone knows that. You know what you're getting in. Like, I wasn't surprised. Not demanding my money back.
Why wouldn't someone build a resort with good food there? Is that just not possible? By the way, you should crack open your, this is become a tradition on the podcast. Here it is. That's not an alcoholic beverage.
Because of the embargoes. Can't get the right food down.
Can't get food down there. We can't get any food, guys. Thanks for coming and visiting Cuba. You won't be fed for a week. You dropped some pounds, actually.
I did. I'm svelte right now.
Yeah, I'm going the opposite direction.
This is what goes on in the Sports Center newsroom at night. We were both lounging in our comfy chairs at our desks.
Oh, yeah.
We don't even have desks. We have, if there's a spare computer, you sit down at it.
Yeah, and there's like a kid who's been there for 2 weeks straight out of Ryerson. You're like, can I, I'm going to need to sit down. Yeah, I'm already sitting here. Okay. I guess I'll just write on the floor then. I'll find a laptop or something like that.
So we were...
Sorry to bother you,
so, if that is your name.
Yeah.
So Jay leaned back and put his belly out, and then I walked by and put my belly out, and mine shrunk significantly because of the Cuba diet.
Yeah, we were a little worried about you over the summer. You were really packing it on.
Now I think the tables have turned.
Big time. It's trouble for me. You are the biggest loser, and I am fat.
Hey, I have an admission to make.
Let's hear it.
I don't know if the guy saw you were busy doing other things when I came into to work tonight. Well, to tape this.
The Perfectly Pressed podcast.
I just finished crying in the car.
What?
For the first time since the London Olympics, Coldplay and what's that song? Paradise?
Right.
So we've already mentioned our Olympic story. After you had taken our makeup artist home because she was nearly dead.
Yeah, after she fell on her face and probably gave herself a concussion.
They played a montage of all the Canadian Olympic moments to that song in Canada House. And that was the first time I heard that song since I was bawling like a baby on the way.
You were in tears on the 401?
I was.
Jeez, you're a very emotional guy.
While that was happening, I forgot to mention this when we were telling our Olympic stories. While that was happening at Canada House, I was bawling then. They're like, it's okay, man. It's...
Like people had their arms around
you? Yes,
they're
like, it's okay. They're okay. Everything's okay. I'm like, I know. I'm just like trained so hard. And then...
It is sort of appropriate, though, and we discussed this, that they were kind of the crying games. Like every day there was a different Canadian athlete crying. Paula Findlay would cry.
Oh, and when they showed that, I was literally, I had the cry going.
Yeah, we're on set in Trafalgar Square, and everyone's in tears. And
great.
Here it is again. Here come the waterworks from Toolsy. It's going to be tears in the studio. Just a lot of blubbering. Poor guy.
You know what? We never touched upon the Catherine Dolan email that we received.
Oh, yeah. Explain that one. That was after the first podcast. And again, I had told the story. And if you haven't heard that story, you should go back to the first podcast and listen to it. You can subscribe on iTunes. Catherine heard my story about our makeup artist who fell and gave herself a concussion because Dan
Has
had
anyone
enabled
checked
her.
on her since? Has anyone called London?
The next day, I insisted she send me an email to let me know she was alive, and she did. And then she sent me a few, and she's like, I'm so embarrassed.
There's no accent on an email.
It's never happened to me before. I swear in the Holy Bible, I've never had a glass of Chardonnay, and Dan kept bringing them to me one by one.
He wanted in my knickers.
He wanted to get in my panties.
So anyway, after that story was told, Catherine Dolan sent us an email. She says, wow, if you thought that was a good story, wait till you hear the story about our intern. And then, I don't know what the details were, but it involved poop on the floor or something. I don't know. She won't tell us. She said she ran it by a few people, and she said she'd get fired if she told it. So
Really?
we've got to get her on.
Yeah, so we'll get her on for sure. And she'll probably be fired, but it'll be great podcast.
Rod
listening.
Smith wasn't fired. Rod Smith won an award after he was on this podcast.
It can't be a coincidence that after being our guest host on the podcast last week, that this week Rod was presented with the Best Sportscaster in Canada award by Canadian Sports Media, a group that we still didn't realize existed and apparently has existed for years without our knowledge. They were probably like, yeah, don't let those guys know. Just don't tell them that we're around, okay? And there was a luncheon, and like Hedger went to the luncheon, and
Brian Williams
was there.
I saw we showed the clip of Rod getting his award. Brian Williams gave him the half handshake, half hug kind of thing.
Brian Williams is very street. When you think of someone who rose up from the streets and made something of himself, I think of CTV Olympic host Brian Williams.
He always comes up to me whenever he sees me. Big handshake. Dad, how's it going?
I'll say this about Brian Williams. He couldn't be nicer to me as well. And he comes up to me. Every time Brian comes up to me, he says the exact same thing. He says, Jay, I'm going to tell you something. Ralph Mellenby at CBC told me years ago, never try to be someone else other than who you are. Just be yourself, and you'll be great in TV, and you'll have a big, successful career. And you are an individual, and I appreciate that. And that's what Ralph Mellenby told me. He's told me that story 17 times.
Wait, that sounded like a poor Barack Obama impersonation.
Really?
Yes.
A Barry O impression? Am I better than Fred Armisen?
You are better than Fred Armisen. We haven't touched upon that either, that he was taken away from the Barack Obama role on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, I think that was long overdue.
Oh,
you
yeah.
had a black man in the cast.
Yeah. And he does a great job.
And he does a good Barack Obama. That was probably something that should have happened right when they got the black man in the cast. Maybe make that decision then. I think, and you love this show, I think Fred Armisen's too busy writing and starring in Portlandia at the same time.
I saw it on a flight we were on together. It seems we go everywhere together.
Yes, we do. We do a lot of traveling together. And you like Portlandia. But speaking of doing things together, I had a dream about you this morning.
What? This morning?
Can we cue up the Careless Whisper, Christoph? Because
Wait.
because what happens?
Don't most people sleep at night?
Well, this is the thing. So I'm up till 5 a.m. every single morning. You know, we finish our show around 2:30 a.m. And then I get home, I crack open 7 or 8 bottles of scotch and just start sampling. And just sort of sit in a very quiet room by myself. And then I crash at about 5:30. But for some reason I got up at around 11 and then went back to sleep. And that's when I started to have a dream. And the dream involved you and I being in some rural town in Alberta at some event. And we were having a great time. Everyone was being, very nice to us. And then all of a sudden, we came upon Arrested Development star Jason Bateman.
Oh, this is great.
And
people say we look alike.
And I said, hey, geez, we big fans of you, Jason Bateman. Can we get a picture? And he's like, no problem. And I said to, a lady standing by, can you take a picture of Dan and me and Jason Bateman? This is great. We'll put it on our Twitter account. And the lady said, oh, your phone doesn't work. And so I was like, oh, geez, okay, I'm going to go try to find a phone that works. And then I spent the rest of the dream running around the small Alberta town trying to find someone with a phone so I could get my picture taken with Jason Bateman. And I couldn't do it, and it was so frustrating. You know those dreams you wake up, and you're like, oh, my God, thank God that didn't really happen. I was so embarrassed.
That is very odd. Why was he there?
I don't know. I haven't even thought of Jason Bateman in a long time. Not sexually.
You just made the, speaking of your phone, you just made the switch to the iPhone.
I did, yeah.
And I ran into an article in the Globe and Mail, and this is actually the headline. Ew, a BlackBerry. How a must-have phone became an object of shame. And there's a quote in here. Okay. This article describes Rachel Crosby, who she hides at parties and conferences or slides it underneath her iPad at business meetings so her clients won't judge her. This is talking about her BlackBerry. I'm ashamed of it. I want to take a bat to it. You can't do anything with it. You're supposed to. It's all a big lie.
That's actually pretty good. That's probably exactly what Rachel Crosby sounds like.
Is this what society's come to? Oh, don't look at my phone. Don't.
Yeah, it's like having a cold sore. Ugh. Having herpes. BlackBerry. We're like herpes.
Oh my God! I finally saw her, by the way, when I got back from Cuba.
Oh yeah, you saw the maid at the Calgary hotel who had Weston Dressler on her floor, and she's
a good Canadian woman.
I made Weston Dressler's bed.
Oh God.
I have to stop taking sips. Or at least give me a heads up that some clips are coming.
Oh, my God. At Jay and Dan TSN, at Jay Onright, at TSN O'Toole. Again, thank you for all your tweets. I've really been enjoying the feedback for the podcast. It's been mostly positive.
Oh, there's been some negative ones?
Well, I saw that now there's a sort of an alternative weekly newspaper in Winnipeg called The Uptown. And The Uptown is a great paper. My friend Susan Creepart used to be the editor-in-chief of that paper, and she'd come on the Big Breakfast with me all the time. But they were not that impressed with the podcast. I'm going to see if I can find out exactly what they had to say on that one.
You didn't want to have that webpage loaded?
Yeah, I guess I should have had it ready to go.
He's literally Google searching right now.
I should have had it ready to go.
What did they say? Can you sum it up?
Yeah, no, I got it right here. Here we go. Okay. With the runaway momentum of Bill Simmons' BS report, along with other ESPN and Grantland podcasts, it was only a matter of time before TSN tried to replicate that success. Jay Onright, the former host of the short-lived pop culture mashup The Week That Was, now sits behind the desk for TSN's flagship show, SportsCenter. And his partner Dan O'Toole, they were the obvious choices to lead the network's push into cross-platform content development. If you get a kick out of Onright and O'Toole's sense of humor every night on SportsCenter, you'll likely be a fan of their podcast. Otherwise, you might want to avoid it entirely. If you're expecting this to be on par with Grantland's offerings and shows such as Jalen Rose's podcast, you'll be sorely disappointed. Other streaming and downloadable options available.
I think they summed it up quite well.
I think that's probably as positive a review as we'll ever get. My favorite part of that whole review, though, is that this person feels that I started my career with a 4-episode stint on a show on Much More Music and now have been rescued by SportsCenter. Not 10 years on SportsCenter, then show on Much More Music, and now continuing my career in shame.
Well, congratulations. So you've been at TSN for a year now.
Yeah, just 1 year. And I think it's going pretty well. We got a podcast out of it.
We're going to get into the lockout stuff here in a minute.
Oh, yeah. Believe me, the whole crux of the podcast interview today will be about the lockout talks this week, the highs, the lows. Aaron Ward, TSN hockey analyst and insider, is breaking a lot of information about the lockout. We're going to go over everything with him.
But I figured since we had access to computers, because, again, we never know if we're going to get a computer in the SportsCenter newsroom. I figured we'd study up on our KHL teams because when we're given KHL highlights, I believe it's sometimes that they're just inventing names of these teams. It happened the other night on SportsCenter.
Dynamo Moscow taking on Sibir Novosibirsk.
Is that a team? My favorite part of that whole clip was at the very end when you said Sibir.
So there it is. Seaber Nova. Seriously,
Seaber.
go to the KHL website. I would give you the URL, but it makes no sense. Just Google KHL. But it's Seaber Novosibirsk. Some other teams. Yogre Kanate Masnisk.
Yeah.
Salavat Yulava Ufa. Oh, that's Ufa. We know Ufa.
Yeah. Tractor Chelyabinsk. We know them.
Baris Astana? Never heard of them.
No, don't. Metallurg Magnitogorsk we've heard of, and according to TSN managing editor of hockey Steve Dryden, former editor-in-chief of the Hockey News, everybody calls Metallurg Magnitogorsk the Gorsk.
Amur Karovsk. They have the best logo, this team here. Avitmobilsti Yeknernberg.
Sounds Swedish.
How would you say this one? The top of the East Division.
Avotmobilsk Yekaterinburg.
Torpedo Zhivny Novgorod.
Severstal Cherevpovets. We sound like two wild and crazy guys, huh? Cherevpovets, you're going to go to the Cherevpovets game, huh?
Donbass Donetsk and Lev Praha.
Bottom line is, I really want the NHL to return.
We're going to have Paul Romanek on the next podcast. He was doing play-by-play in one of our KHL packs, former TSNer, now living in Europe. So I guess he's doing KHL games. I want to know what the heck the rinks are like, what the crowds are like. It's a whole other world.
Rinks look okay. Crowds don't look. It doesn't look packed every night. There's a lot. There's a lot of money in that league, and it's not like they're 18,000 seat buildings. It's as if there's some corruption going on in Russia.
I must break you.
Are you a big Amur Kaburovsky guy? Love the Kaburovs.
Look at the Kaburbs. Big Kaburb fan.
And these, I don't know who came up with half these logos, but anyway, we're going to be talking KHL a lot because of this lockout stuff.
I'm looking forward to that.
No, you aren't.
I am looking forward to talking lockout with you.
I thought you said you're looking forward to watching or talking about KHL.
Oh, no. KHL's done. We're finished talking about that now. That's over.
You're garbage. KHL, get out of here.
Yeah. But no, let's start talking about it now, and then Wardo will come on in a few minutes and discuss this.
Oh, well, wait. Before we get to Wardo.
Okay.
You didn't sound very impressed there. It was my daughter's. I thought you'd get a kick out of this. It's my daughter's 5th birthday this past week. Said, choose anywhere you want to go. Or we'll have any food you want. She said, I want to go to Red Lobster. Okay, fine, we'll go there. So you figure if you go to Red Lobster, you'll get something seafood, maybe get lobster, maybe get fresh fish. Red Lobster is her favorite restaurant. Every time we go, she gets chicken fingers.
Is it chicken of the sea? Is it actually tuna?
No, it's chicken fingers out of a bag, deep fried, put on your plate.
Why not, eh?
They see food differently. They see it as chicken.
So
she wants to go specifically so that she can see the lobsters in the tank.
This is true. We told her if you want to see fish, you can go to a fish store.
That's like wanting to go to a steakhouse and having cattle roaming around in between the table themselves in between while you're taking a bite of steak. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to murder that cow later, and he'll be on your plate.
And she will
be on your plate.
And she did get a fish for her birthday, so now maybe the desire for the staring at the Red Lobster tank will subside now that she's got a fish and a frog.
Or maybe she'll just try to eat them both.
This is also...
Sydney, where are your pets? I ate them.
Did I talk about this on the last podcast? Sorry, I'm still blocking you from the lockout talk.
Yeah, no
In
problem.
Cuba, my daughter's names are Sydney and Ruby. We met another couple their daughters' names were Sydney and Ruby.
What?
Is that is astronomical proportions of happening.
I would love to know.
Did I describe that right?
What are the odds of that happening? Statistically, what are the odds of that happening? You ending up at a resort in Cuba with children the exact same names. And Ruby's an interesting, unique name. You know, not every girl has the name Ruby.
No, and Sydney's a bit more common, but yeah, I found that very bizarre. Okay, Lockout.
All right, let's talk Lockout. So this week, Tuesday, I made fun of myself a bit on SportsCenter this week because I got a little overexcited, like a lot of hockey fans did, I think. And a lot of, in my defense, other hockey broadcasters and media people got a little excited Tuesday when the NHL's proposal came out. The 50-50 split, the way that Bill Daly had supposedly put it together so that the players who were concerned about having all their contracts honored, that down the road, that they would be reimbursed over a period of time. And it seemed like, okay, we have a framework to do something here. And then Thursday happened.
We gave it our best shot. It is our best offer.
If you assume that's their best offer, why in the world did we see it 4 weeks into a lockout?
I am, to say the least, thoroughly disappointed.
It's a very simple proposition.
Just it doesn't look good right now.
I was the same belief as you on Tuesday. I don't know what your routine is in the morning or afternoon or whenever the hell you get up.
Well, basically, I get up, I dream of Jason Bateman, I take a shower, and a cold one, and then I get on with my day.
So I wake up and I always go through my emails, which there's a million by then because we're on every email list in the building.
Mm-hmm.
So I was ecstatic. You know how you have a jump out of bed?
Yeah.
When you know good things are happening, you're like, all right, let's get this day started. I was jacked. By the way, producer Tim does that in the newsroom. If you've ever noticed it, sometimes when he's sitting in his chair, he will launch himself to his feet to get out of his chair. Like, all right, here we go. It's very odd.
That's when he's going for a dart. That's when he's heading out and getting ready to crush a dart or two.
So I was of the same belief. I'm like, all right, we're down to 50-50.
Yeah.
But
now, this is the thing. Pierre LeBrun, TSN hockey insider Pierre LeBrun, is taking a different take on all this because I think, again, most of us hockey fans were really high on Tuesday, very low on Thursday, and now we feel like it's apocalypse again and we're not going to have hockey this year. But, according to Pierre, the devil is in the details. This is his latest article on ESPN.com. For the first time in this entire process dating back to last June, the players made official offers that included the numbers 50-50 in them.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We both say that a lot, I guess. We're getting the feeling here.
Now, the problem is that the players, and I understand this, and Pierre's saying this too, I think that's only fair. Pierre says, I know I sound like a broken record by now, but this negotiation is always hinged on one single factor. The players not wanting to lose a single dime from current contracts they signed in good faith with owners before the lockout. And Pierre says, I'm on record saying this. I think that's only fair. And I think everybody feels the same way. This is what I don't understand, and we'll ask Aaron Ward about. Why, and Wardo's on the line with us now, Wardo's Weird Wide Web. Wardo, before we ask you a question, we have a bit of an intro for you before you get on here. Wardo, listen to this.
Oh, they have the internet on computers now.
Our internet insider, Aaron Ward.
Yeah, watch how you use the word insider.
Wardo's Weird Wide Web.
I will make it my mission to find something utterly disgusting about humanity that we can discuss every single week.
You ride that internet, you weird, glorious bastard.
Wardo, what do you think of the intro?
Well, now I'm worried because everything I say can and will be used against me in a court of law.
This is true.
Damn right it will. We're building a case on you, buddy.
It's not too hard, fellas.
Hey, first of all, have you found anything weird or creepy on the web? I know you're sitting around your house and you're wishing you were back here in the studio. What creepy things have you found for us other than butt chugging?
Not a whole lot. Actually, I got a bad story. I got a buddy who had one of his coworkers go up to Toronto to do some business. Works with Cisco. He's up there and they engage in a conversation. And somehow, some way, my neighbor comes back. He says, "What is this? You're the butt chugging guy." I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, my coworker went up to Toronto, and you're known as the butt-chugging guy in Toronto. I'm like, oh, geez. One mistake will haunt you forever.
Beautiful, isn't it?
But I haven't got anything. Unfortunately, with the CBA going on, I haven't had a lot of free time to peruse the internet in a distorted way.
So, Wardo, 3 proposals were put forth by the NHLPA. I believe the NHL, they read them in 10 minutes. Is Gary Bateman the fastest reader in the history of the world? Gary Bateman.
I think Gary had already made his mind up before he walked in there that he wasn't going to give him much time. It's been a rough week for Gary with Focus Group Gate that they have going, where they hire someone to come in and try and see how they can spin things. And to be found out and know that you're basically working on self-preservation for a while to see how long you can go and keep yourself in favor with the fans while still really trying to stick it to the union, that doesn't bode well. It doesn't show you're honestly trying to negotiate. So that, in its own right in the first week, wasn't good. And secondarily, to sit in the Toronto offices and be handed not 1 but 3, Gary's thinking to himself that we thought we held serve by coming up with 50-50. We came up. And then for the union to come back and say, we'll give you 3 options, pick your poison, I'm sure he wasn't too happy to see or hear that.
But on the other side of it is the question, why wasn't the union bargaining off Gary's proposal? I think that's the thing that they're questioning. Why are they coming in with their own solutions once again? And are these 2 sides once again talking 2 different languages? Because
in essence, they figured that they had to kick at the cat back in 2005, and the league had an opportunity to negotiate a deal that worked, and it worked. I mean, they got things under control. It was a league and teams that were hemorrhaging in 2005, and the circumstances have changed. It's now 2012. We're talking about billions, and it's not losses, it's gains. So, unfortunately, neither of us or none of us have a spreadsheet that shows that kind of money. But when it gets down to it, human nature has it where greed comes out, and both sides want to make sure that they're taken care of. And so from the viewpoint of the players, they're not negotiating off of what the league is bringing forward because they feel like you had your chance. You had a rollback at 24%. You instituted the salary cap. Number of changes to the league. Now in 2012, it's our opportunity to address what, in essence, we feel is the problem, or what you guys say is the problem. We've got struggling teams in certain markets. So I think you have a pretty steadfast union. More so now when you see Gary walk in, as you mentioned before, and in 10 minutes reject it. And in that room is Iginla, one of those guys that was one of the catalysts to getting things resolved back in 2005, and the star of the league, and Sidney Crosby, sitting there witnessing for himself just even the disrespect of going to a bargaining table and having it finish off so quickly.
I like the PR strategy that Fear's using, because after the NHL put forth their proposal, he came out and said, you know what, there's something to work with here. We're going to take a peek at it and then come back to the NHL. Meanwhile, Gary comes out and he doesn't even come close to mentioning words that Fear used, and he just throws it under the table without even saying, okay, there's something we can work with here. He's not. Did they just burn copies of that?
I think that what's really coming down to is both sides ad nauseum know where each other has their position or what they want to see come out of the negotiations. So the PA made a pretty smart move and to start talking about things going 50-50. If those are the numbers you want, and then the PA brought them forth today in 3 different proposals. Now, how you get to 50-50, again, we go back to pick your poison. And in 3, to me, the third proposal was the most shocking one to come right out and say, okay, we'll go 50-50 from the first day. But you're going to have to pay our contracts at face value, and we have a way in which this can work, but you have to follow. And really what I got to tell you is this is calling out a league that for a short period of time towards the end of the summer started signing these ridiculous contracts. I mean, they were tying up everybody, and everybody knew as you started seeing more and more guys pile in with 6- and 7-year deals, unprecedented 6- and 7-year deals. You're thinking to yourself, how is this? All these guys getting locked up. Well, they didn't want any sheep straying from the flock. They wanted whatever came down during the negotiations to apply to every single player, no stray players. So, I mean, you got, Carey Price, 6 or 7 years, Simmons, 6 or 7 years, Hartnell, all these guys, it became almost a number. Everybody had to hit a 6 or 7 year deal, knowing that you were never actually going to pay that dollar amount, because the owners had a feeling that when this process was finalized, there was going to be a rollback, and there was going to be what they call an escrow. But the escrow is deceiving, because really, you don't have a chance. You don't really have a chance to get that money back.
But
under their proposal.
But at the same time, it's also individual markets, right, Wardo? I mean, if you're in Montreal and you have a chance as a fan to lock up Carey Price for all that time, even if you're not going to play hockey for 2 years, as a fan of that team, you want him locked up, right? So these, in the defense of some of these GMs and some of these teams, they're dealing with their own individual fans in each market, and if it's best for that team to lock Carey Price up and make sure he doesn't go away, if contracts are going to be limited somewhat to 5 years or whatever it ends up being, you can kind of understand why. I'm not defending all of them, but I'm just saying you can understand why each individual GM would take that route.
Jay, you're a really smart man. You could go with that, but you could also go with the idea that you also know there's a lockout coming, and if a player wants to go abroad and and we won't get discussing, go abroad. I realize I have to watch my verbiage when I'm talking.
That could be the weird wide web.
Oh my God!
There it is.
When you want to go abroad and play hockey, and you go either to Russia or the Czech, it's a lot different insuring a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal than a 6 or 7 year deal. Like, for instance, David Krejci, who's making somewhere in the range of $5.5 million per year. I think it's over 5 years. For him to play hockey in the Czech right now, it's $240,000 to insure his contract. It's ridiculous. So it's almost, hopefully, a deterrent for some of the players to decide to go over, because not only are you not making a paycheck, now you're paying to play the game. Mm-hmm. But it's funny to watch some of these players actually going that far. I know Zetterberg's paying $30,000 a month to play.
Wow.
So, but again, you can go with the direct, obvious. You're doing what's best for your organization, for your city, for your fan base to lock those guys up. I can agree with that. But there is a level of suspicion, obviously, coming down to a negotiating period, and these contracts haven't been paid out at this level. To say now there's a change, why is that? And so, I mean, that's the first thought.
Wardo, let us behind the curtain. A lot of times we have a lot of B-roll for those listening.
Explain B-roll.
Yeah, that's what you see when we're talking about lockout stuff, and you're seeing shots of the players. They're in their tap-out shirts. They're in shorts. Sometimes they're in jeans. They're in T-shirts.
Sometimes affliction shirts, too.
But then,
Harvey's out?
Like on Thursday, they wore suits. So my question is there a mass email that's put out, say, okay, guys, dress like you're
going to a funeral. Or dress like you're going to the beach. Is there an email that goes out? Because everyone's always dressed the same.
Well, I think what you got in New York was a mass Players Association meeting, and when you saw those guys and they came out and stood in front of us as the media in the Marriott, they had been sitting there for 5, 6, 7 hours in Players Association meetings. So come comfortable, where it reflects the level of seriousness. If you're going to be in there, and I'm sure they're even happier to wear a suit when the negotiation period only lasts 15 minutes. I mean, you wear a suit. I mean, you're standing in front of people, and it's respectable, and this is bottom line. It comes down to business. But when you got, 300, 400, 500 people sitting in a hotel together, it's about comfort.
But I'm surprised that there hasn't been one guy. Everyone shows up in a suit, and he's there in his Ed Hardy shirt saying, "Oh, why didn't anyone tell me?"
Who do you think that would be, Wardo?
Marchand probably showed up in his Ed Hardy
There you
shirt.
go. It's Marchand.
Marchand is size too small.
Wardo, I want to play you 2 different clips this week. One is from Bob McKenzie. And Christoph is going to play this one for us. Listen to this clip from Bob this week. This was after the NHL proposal on Tuesday. This is Bob on TSN Radio Tuesday afternoon.
One thing to say something publicly. It's another thing sitting in the privacy of the ballot booth, if you will, when you're making a decision on something for your career, for your family, or whatever, and you got to make a hard decision. Do I take this deal that takes money away from me, or do I take this other option, door number 2, that takes even more money away from me? How do I want to proceed on this? Do I want to stand on principle, or do I want to be practical?
Okay, so basically he's saying, in the privacy of a voting booth without, all his buddies and without Don Fear over his shoulder, maybe is there a possibility that a good chunk of players would have voted to take that deal on Tuesday and get back to playing? Because as you have pointed out, Wardo, you lost a lot of money over the 2 lockouts that you had to sit out. Now, on the other side of it, we have Mike Johnson, who was also on the radio this week, and he had a different take on it, and I'm sure it's more similar to what you will say, and here's what Mike had to say.
A lot of guys will vote with Donald Fear even if they want to play, even if they believe that this is the deal they should take, because that's how trusting guys are.
And that pretty much sums it up. Do you agree with that, Wardo, or do you think there is maybe a small faction of players that see that fact that, okay, now we're all talking 50-50, and the league is somewhat I think, trying to figure out a way to get the players' contracts honored, and that maybe they should be negotiating off that first deal?
I go with Johnny. I think that hockey players are conditioned to stick with the pack. It's everybody's all in, and you have each other's back, and you have a general understanding of what your game plan is. And for most guys, I don't think they have that nauseous feeling yet where you see a proposal and think to yourself, could this be the last? I mean, that's where you have the older guys around to almost instill that level of confidence. You know what? They will say it's their last, but it's never their last. It's never the last until you sign it. I mean, it could get worse, it could get better, you don't know, but you got to stand firm. And it'll get worse if you start to crack. So I'm with Johnny. I don't think that anybody steps outside of the box and goes off on their own. I think especially this early in the process. I mean, players have been talking about this for years now. They ought to know where they stand and what to expect, and I don't think they're getting nervous and timid about the resolve. I think that most guys, if fear left the building and said, let's get a show of hands, then I think you would get a vast majority of guys that would throw their hands up within a split second.
What I hear about Fear is he's unflappable, and that's what the players like. This guy, nothing phases him. He doesn't throw tantrums. He's always calm, cool, and on top of things. Is that what you hear as well?
I've talked to him a couple times. He's a very level-headed, very smart man. I think that you don't attain that position or achieve that level of respect in your position without knowing that you're the constant. You don't change who you are. I do find him funny, though. It's almost every time I've talked to him, it's never hockey first. I always get some odd story about someone he knows or something about his family that almost calms the mood, and then he gets to business. But I always expect a story about his kids or someone that he knows that within the hockey world that I know and that I've played with or I've interacted with. So he's an interesting guy, and as a guy from looking in from the outside, I think that he's got a pretty good level of respect.
From the outside, he looks like he's the opposite of Goodnow, a guy who, again, I've never spoken to Goodnow, but I could see that guy had a temper.
He reminds me of Bill Clinton a little bit in the capacity that he'd bite his lip a little bit and just be he could be as cutting as possible, but be very calm and even make an insult sound nice. Like, you're an idiot. Just kind of slip it in there. Nice about it, and you just think of him as a graying man that is quite respectable and is businesslike. So yeah, he doesn't seem like a guy that has his peaks and valleys, and I think that's one of the good things with athletes who are accustomed to raising their intensity level and getting the adrenaline going. You have to have someone that maintains that ceiling and don't let guys bust through it. Keep them all contained. Understanding that you don't want to go across the table and rip the heads off of the opponent. This is a negotiation. It's about being stone-faced. It's almost like a poker game. And don't show your cards. Don't show any emotion. Just be firm with your resolve and show nothing else.
Wardo, earlier I was saying that Pierre LeBrun has pointed something out, that for the first time in this entire negotiating process, the players have officially made offers that include the 50-50 number in them. The NHL obviously went to that number on Tuesday, and both sides are trying to figure out a way. And Pierre LeBrun also pointed this out. For the players, the key is they don't want to lose a single dime from their current contracts. Having said all that, is there not a deal to be made here from your perspective, from someone who's played in the league and you're looking at the numbers and you're seeing the proposals? Are they as far apart as they're making it seem on a day like today?
Well, first and foremost, which is the easiest way going forward, always remind yourself when the Players Association is going to take a proposal and look at it, they always ask themselves the first question: are we taking less than we already have, and are we taking just less in the future? I could have said that better, but they just want to make sure they're not taking a step back.
Right.
And so this is the conundrum for them. This is where they look at a proposal and say to themselves, okay, where is this taking us? The 50-50, and this is what I tweeted about today when I talked to a player, and they said there's something interesting kind of should happen today because we're approaching their ideology. And what he meant by that, which I obviously didn't get the full quote because he couldn't give it to me because they hadn't even gotten into the process of negotiating, was they were incorporating the 50-50 language. Mm-hmm. And so once you start talking their language, then hopefully you find some level of traction. Are they that far apart? Well, percentages don't represent dollars, and percentages that we're talking about, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, and that's sometimes difficult to really, wrap your mind around. So does it appear they're that far apart? No, when you're talking the same numbers. But, I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars, that's what we're arguing over right now. So, yeah, we are that far apart.
Wardo, before we let you go, want to get your honest thoughts on this. Jay and I made a gentleman's bet while sitting at the Sports Center desk the other night.
Yeah.
I said after all this, and after they're back playing hockey, the next time the Stanley Cup is presented, I said there is no way Gary Bettman presents it because he will, if he thought he got booed bad before, it is going to be terrifying for him on the ice if he presents the cup. So I bet that he does not present the cup next time, and Jay bet that he does.
And
Jay, you're a smart man.
Exactly. Thank you, Wardo.
Listen, if it's your tee set and you bring it to the birthday party, you get to play with it. If you're the commissioner and you got jurisdiction over the cup, you hand it out.
But he will be so embarrassed.
He won't be.
He's already booed, right, Wardo?
See, what's different than what's already happening? I mean, he had a verbal exchange with a fan walking into the negotiations today, talking about where they're headed. He's past that. I mean, he's the commissioner of a league. He already knows what he's getting himself into, and nobody really likes him in particular just because of the position he's in. So, I mean, it should be expected. So that's what it is. He knows what's happening, and I'm sure he's not losing any sleep over it.
So bottom line, Wardo, Toolsy's going to be buying us beers pretty soon.
Bottom line, you and I are pretty smart guys.
I would debate that.
Okay, we're really smart guys.
Wardo, thanks for joining us.
O'Toole, where are you from?
Oh,
Peterborough.
Yeah.
Really? I thought you were from the Schwa.
I live in the Schwa now.
Well, enough said. Talk to you later, bud.
See you, Wardo.
Bye.
Wow,
Wardo.
so a lot of people against my bet.
Yeah, I don't think it's.
Well, I guess Bettman does have an ego, and he would consider that like admitting he failed.
I don't think any commissioner thinks he's going to be the popular guy with the fans. I mean, I don't think that's why those guys get into the biz. They like the power, right?
One of our things we really look forward to about this podcast, and we're going to finally get to it, the unmasking. The
verbal unmasking of producer Tim. We're taking the ball gag out. Is that an analogy that would make sense?
If you follow producer Tim on Twitter, he's our
producer on SportsCenter. He has been for years.
But he just has a silhouette. What's he up to on Twitter followers? He's up to like 20,000 or something?
What? Check.
I don't know how to search a person.
Just TSN producer Tim. TSN. You can follow producer Tim on Twitter if you want to learn about
17,000 and change.
So producer Tim has more followers than a lot of our other anchors do, and his ego is out of control. And so people have always asked us, is he real? And the answer is yes. People have also asked us, can we see him? And the answer is no. But you will be able to hear him in a new segment where I think we're calling it Story Time with Producer Tim. Is that right, Mike?
Is it?
Story Time with Producer Tim? Okay, here's an intro to Producer Tim making his verbal appearance on the podcast.
Can you tell me a bedtime story?
Wow. That was terrifying.
That was damn frightening. That was really good. I liked it. Okay, so story time with producer Tim. Tim is first going to tell a story about us on the show. We haven't heard this yet. This is the first time we've heard this. So let's get and you're going to finally hear producer Tim's voice. Here we go.
I do watch The Big Bang Theory. I enjoy it because I'm kind of a geek, and it reminds me of Onright. Favorite character is Penny. I think the reasons for that are pretty obvious. Onright is Sheldon. O'Toole is Leonard. I guess I'm Raj.
Wait, can we go back to the beginning of that? There was a moan or something. Oh my goodness.
Oh my God.
I could listen to that. Now, we just need that and Rod Smith reading Justin Bieber tweets, and we don't even have to show up for the podcast.
So obviously, Mike Gentili and Christoph, our producers, operators, have modulated Tim's voice slightly. But do we have a little more of that? Is that it? That's it. That's it for this week. Can we hear it one more time?
Yeah,
Can we hear it one more time,
Chris?
Christoph?
Hear that again.
I do watch The Big Bang Theory. I enjoy it because I'm kind of a geek, and it reminds me of On-Right. Favorite character is Penny. I think the reasons for that are pretty obvious. On-Right is Sheldon. O'Toole is Leonard. I guess I'm Raj.
You know what that voice sounds like? It sounds a little bit like the self-help guru Tony Robbins.
It does a little. I want to understand. I'll have to listen to it without the modulation. What that moan came from?
What the? That's his voice. That's the breathing. It is. Yeah, Christoph said that. It's his breath.
Oh wow.
So when we talk about how Tim breathes in our ear every night, you know what it sounds like? This is what it sounds like. Try working with that in your ear, folks.
I didn't know he was a big Bang Theory fan. A big Bang Theory fan.
He is kind of a geek, but then again, so am I. So
I guess I'm Raj.
He is Raj.
So what's Raj? What's Raj's
He's one of the characters on the... See, I don't know that show. I just know that everyone thinks I look like Sheldon. That's all I know.
Tim was all a flutter the other night. A flutter? A titter?
He was up. His nipples were erect.
He was, because they were showing... There was a scene on one of the TVs in the newsroom, and the blonde girl was in a laundromat with another girl, and he said, oh, yeah, this scene... It's a cat fight scene, Mike is telling us, our producer. So, yeah, I don't want to be in the same room as him if he's watching that at home.
I'll say this, though. I think Story Time with producer Tim is going to be probably the biggest podcast hit ever. He's going to have his own podcast pretty soon.
Yeah, they said it was like pulling teeth, though, to get 10 seconds out of him.
Yeah, he came back into the newsroom after, Christoph and Mike were talking to him. He's like, I thought I was going to be sitting down with you guys. He wanted me to just tell a story, and I didn't know what to do.
Oh, man. I wanted to, before we get to the mark of the day, you lent me a copy of GQ, Gentleman's Quarterly.
I got two. I subscribe to magazines still. None of them pornographic.
I believe I'm going to be getting that for Christmas because my mom, she saw I had it on the trip.
Right.
And she'd asked me prior. She says, someone in her condo, their kids selling magazine subscriptions for Christmas.
Yeah.
She's like, do you still read Chickadee? I'm like, no. Do you read Maclean's? I'm like, no one does. So she's going through these magazines. I'm like, I don't read any of those. I don't need a magazine.
Chickadee.
So she's like, GQ. So do you like reading that magazine? I'm like,
sounds like your mom's hitting on you.
Yeah, so I'm like, okay, I know what I'm getting for Christmas. Anyway, in that, the latest edition with the Spanish guy on the cover. What's his name?
Javier Bardem.
Javier Bardem. There's an article about that makes a case for Cheers as the greatest sitcom of all time, and it's a very well written article and raises some points. So you might want to check out that article in the latest edition of GQ.
Yeah, it's like an oral history of Cheers, so all the actors sort of giving their take on it. Kelsey Grammer was really up during that time. He had some serious issues with drugs and booze, and obviously it all worked out for him, but man, he was messed up.
And they quote a lot of current actors and comedians and how they look to that show, and that's what inspired them to get into the business. I'm a massive Seinfeld fan.
I was going to say, Dan, show. Yeah, I still have to go with Seinfeld as the greatest of all time. Though I was watching comedians in cars getting coffee with Jerry Seinfeld and Michael Richards. So I guess that was the final episode he did. I found it awkward.
It was awkward. Well, he finally was himself by the end of it when he was talking about, because he was being a character.
That was the part I found awkward. Yes, I agree with you. At the end when he was talking about the incident and the comedy club that we all know about, that was the best part of the podcast, because you're right, he was genuine. But the rest of it, he knew the camera was on him. Yeah, that was weird.
Okay, so Mark of the Week, if you have never listened to the podcast, well, you're an idiot. So this is the 5th one, and every week we have a Mark of the Week because it's the Mark's Perfectly Pressed podcast brought to you by Mark's Perfectly Pressed Shirts.
You did it.
Yes.
It only took you 5 podcasts, but you got it.
So we let a Plinko chip fall down the board. We brought, by popular demand, the long Plinko chip board back.
Oh, excellent. And I'm 2 for 4.
You're 2 for 4.
Yeah, so far. I've got half of them right so far.
And Jay guesses the mark after we play an audio clip. So let the Plinko chip fall.
I really underestimated how uncomfortable it is to say no. Jennifer had brought it up in the first season of Idol. I was like, the guy, he didn't have a good audition. Just say no. She's like, no, there's something. It's not that easy. She probably had the most experience of all of us in saying no.
Okay, that's too easy.
Is that Mark Anthony?
Yes.
Yeah.
What? As soon as he said Jennifer.
Yeah, I know. That's the only reason I got that. I wouldn't have.
I know.
By my admission, I would not have.
Christoph, what the hell are you doing in there?
Hey, Christoph. No, I should get the showcase.
No, he did that to himself, though, I think.
Oh, I see.
There
it is, winner. I miss Bob Barker.
Okay, so we're going to be talking some more about the KHL next Perfectly Pressed podcast. Hopefully, we'll have some new news on the lockout.
Yeah,
because and
I don't think we will though. Possible guests. We've got some good possible guests coming up. We did mention Paul Romanek. We're going to try to get Paul Romanek, who now lives in London, England. Is that right, Mike? So, Romy has been calling KHL games, and he called some stuff over the Olympics for CTV.
All the time.
Calls the Spengler Cup. So we're gonna chat with Romy. I want to talk to Romy about when he left TSN and went to the team radio. Do you remember that, Mike? And I'm curious to get his take on that, if he regrets that decision to go to the team radio. So we'll discuss that.
In the coming weeks, we're going to have Kevin Conley from Entourage.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
He is doing a 30 for 30 documentary on the New York Islanders owner that bought the team with not a single penny. So we'll want to get his take on that, and also about the Entourage movie, if it's being shot. And we came up with a dream guest that we both want to get. We were talking about this in the newsroom the other night because I was watching Jiminy Glick clips on YouTube. We want to get Martin Short.
Oh man, that would be a career highlight because he is the greatest talk show guest of all time. He is such a great guest on talk shows. So if we could get him on the podcast, that'd be great. We'll see what we can do. We'll talk to his people. Hey, he appeared on Canada's Got Talent, so I mean, that was awful.
All right, have a great week, and we'll thanks for listening to the podcast and keeping it number 1 on iTunes in Canada.
Yeah, subscribe on iTunes, check it out on tsn.ca/podcasts, and send us your feedback at Jay and Dan TSN, at Jay Onright, at TSN O'Toole. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
They're going home.
Dance. 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 Keep dancing.
Brought to you by Mark's Never Iron Perfectly Pressed Shirts. This